There's just something different about living in a small town. They say everyone knows everybody's business. Gossip and rumors spread like weeds, and you can't cross the street without the whole town knowing about it. But if all that is true, then how is it possible for 3 young women to be murdered in one night without everyone knowing who did it? Yet no one did. And though this town will never forget the events of that night 10 years ago, the case itself had gone cold. Until last night. Another murder, and this case was no longer cold. They all grew up together, as everyone in this small town did. They were the best of friends all through high school, right up until the end. It was a long weekend, only a few weeks after prom, in May of '86. The 3 young women decided to get together to share a bottle of wine and toast their high school years now in the past. They chose to meet at their usual hangout spot, just off the corner of school grounds. They had claimed this spot early in the first year of high school. It was a short walk from the school building, across the football field, and surrounded by trees that kept them out of view from anyone on the grounds or a nearby road. It was a perfect place to sneak away to when skipping a class, or to share a cigarette as they often did back in those days. They'd meet here on weekends as well. It was just a safe and familiar place to hang out and waste some time together. Everyone in the school knew about this spot, but few dared to visit it, unless a proper invitation was given, of course. These girls grew up in the north side of town, right near the school, and they were considered the most popular group in it. No one wanted to deal with the wrath they would face if this group ever decided it was their turn to be picked on. But on this night, someone did visit their spot, knowing they'd be there, and came with murderous intentions. It was a Saturday night, shortly after dusk, about 7:30 p.m. Joan, who was an elderly woman in the community, was walking her dog across the playing field, as she did most nights before bed. Then she heard the sounds coming from the forest. Joan hurried back to her home and dialed 911. The police arrived, and it didn't take long to discover the brutal scene. This is a town that has barely witnessed a real crime. Occasional graffiti from bored teenagers maybe, but it's certainly not a town familiar with murder. The 3 victims were discovered all laying side by side, face down, and had all been shot in the back, execution style. The sick perpetrator then left a single bird feather sticking out of each of their shirts, laying it on their neck. Completely overwhelmed by the scene, the local sheriff called in for assistance from the nearest big city to help with the investigation. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived and took over the scene, An early morning rain shower had washed away any possible evidence that could have been collected. All they had to go on now was 3 bodies and 3 feathers. An initial ballistics report did note that all 3 bullets were fired from the same gun, and that it was likely a revolver as no casings were found at the scene. But other than that, there was nothing left to learn from the scene itself. So the police returned to the station to begin a background investigation on the victims and try to figure out who could have possibly committed such a heinous crime. Rumors and finger-pointing began immediately within the community. By the end of the weekend, the local authorities had sifted through a pile of anonymous letters that had been dropped at the station and fielded a few dozen phone calls, many being the same caller with a different theory they had just come up with since their last call. But one revelation kept repeating in the leads. There had been a big argument the night of prom, and it was between these 3 victims and a now separated young couple, Gemma and Danny. One of them had cheated on the other at prom, but who did what and with whom depended on who was telling the story. It wasn't much to go on, but at least it was something in town that was reeling in fear and disbelief. So Gemma and Danny were quickly picked up and brought in for questioning. Looking back, I can see how this case had gone cold. With little to no real forensic evidence, all there was to go on was a few suspect interviews. And when someone has every reason to lie, then telling the difference between truth and lies can be challenging enough, let alone trying to prove it. But reviewing the case now, all we have to go on is these interviews. And unfortunately, due to overuse and poor evidence storage by the authorities, we found the tape recordings to be in pretty rough shape. The computer was used to try and enhance the audio, at least enough to get a transcript out of it. So let's take a listen to the first one with Gemma from back in 1986 and see if we can learn anything from it.
Okay, Gemma, where were you last Saturday night, between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m.?
Last Saturday? I think I was just at home all night.
You think? Gemma, this is a serious matter, and I need you to take it seriously. So, were you at home all night, or did you go out at all?
No, I was home all night, I think. I was. I was just listening to music and chilling in my room.
And was there anybody else at home with you?
At what time?
From 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., who else was at home with you?
Well, my parents went to Bert's bar for drinks like they always do after supper. I don't know what time they left. And my younger sister, I think she was already at work. She usually works part-time landscaping for the town, and said something about decorating trees for the long weekend parade or something.
So you were home alone for most of the night?
I guess so.
Gemma, what was your relationship with the 3 women murdered last Saturday night?
Well, I wasn't in a relationship with any of them.
Let me rephrase the question. Did you know any of the three women who were murdered last Saturday night?
Yes, I knew all of them. We all grew up here and went to school together and everything.
So you knew them. Is it fair to say that you were friends with them?
Most of the time, I guess, yeah.
I've been told that there was an argument between you and these women a few weeks back at your prom. What can you tell me about that?
Just girl stuff mostly. Girls always talking and spreading rumors and stuff. Well, one of them girls was trying to get with my boyfriend and break us up. So they told me he was making out with her, and then told him I was messing with Ricky in the bathroom that night.
And your boyfriend is Danny?
He was, not no more.
How long was your relationship with Danny?
Well, we started as kids, then on and off, and were engaged a little more than a year.
So, you were engaged to Danny?
Well, he never gave me a ring or nothing, but he said I was the only one and we were going to marry someday. But not anymore, 'cause it's over now.
Was he your boyfriend when you went to the prom that night?
Yeah, but he ain't no more, 'cause he thinks I slept with Ricky, so he doesn't want to talk to me anymore.
I see. And who is Ricky?
He's just Ricky from school.
I mean, who is he to you? Do you have a relationship with Ricky?
You mean did I sleep with him?
I just mean, how well do you know him?
It's Ricky. He grew up here too. He just drives around in his truck and drinks most of the time. His dad's got a lot of money and owns a few stores on Main Street.
So after the argument at prom, have you had any contact with any of these three women?
Nope. I mean, no.
What else can you tell me about that night after the argument took place?
I don't know what you all want me to say. I mean, I'm scared, okay. 3 people just got killed, and maybe I'll be next.
Do you think someone we've just spoken about, or someone involved in the argument, had something to do with this?
I mean, I don't know. I just mean because of the feather, and, like, maybe it's a sign, and I'm next.
What do you mean by a sign with the feather?
I mean my tattoo. It's a feather. Like, is this supposed to just be a coincidence? Or something?
Can I see your tattoo? For the record, you have a feather tattoo on the back of your neck. When did you get that tattoo?
Like, over a year ago.
And why did you get that tattoo on your neck?
It's kind of personal, you know, but I mean, do you think they'll be coming after me next?
I understand it might be personal, but I need to know why a feather, and why you got that tattoo on your neck.
Look, I'm not getting into all that personal stuff, but let's just say growing up in my house hasn't been easy. My sister and I always talked about running away when we was kids, or moving away together once school was done.
So what does that have to do with a feather tattoo on your neck?
When we were growing up, we would hide in the attic and watch the birds fly around outside. They were free to come and go whenever they wanted, and go wherever they wanted to.
So you got the tattoo as a symbol to come and go when you wanted?
It just means freedom to me. Like one day I'll be free.
There were more questions unrelated to the crime that shed light on her childhood and the trauma her and her sister grew up with in a violent home. Gemma never did get away from town. She still lives here and works as the assistant manager of produce at the local grocery store. Her sister never moved away either, and her parents are both deceased after suffering lengthy illnesses. Gemma never married, though she was close once with a co-worker. but he left her and moved away to the coast. She has no kids and still dreams about a future being free, living somewhere where it's warm all year round. The police spoke to the family who lived next door to Gemma's home. They confirmed that it didn't seem like a healthy place for the girls to live, but they preferred to mind their own business. That family had a son, a young boy living in the house who had a bit of a crush on the girls next door and admitted to watching them through his bedroom window on occasion. He was able to tell the police that although he couldn't be 100% sure which sister it was that Saturday night, loud music had gotten his attention and he remembers watching a female silhouette walking around her room to change the songs. After the interview with Gemma, the detective was also interested in speaking with Ricky, whose name had come up as being involved with the argument back at prom. So he dispatched an officer to locate him and bring him in for questioning as well. In the meantime, Danny was already there, sitting in the room across the hall waiting to be interviewed. Danny wasn't a big talker, more the strong yet loner silent type. Let's review some of his interview back in '86 and see if we can learn anything about the crime.
Do you prefer Danny or Daniel?
People call me Danny.
Okay, Danny. Where were you last Saturday night between the hours of 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.?
Let me think.
Danny?
I'm just trying to think. That was a few days ago now.
Danny, it was the night 3 young women were murdered in your town. And I understand this kind of thing doesn't happen here very often. So surely you can remember where you were when 3 women got murdered in your town.
Well, I know I was working. I was just trying to remember where I was between those times.
And what type of work are you doing?
I work for the town, in the maintenance division. Been part-time in the summers for 3 years, and gone full-time since graduation.
And you were working on a Saturday night? Last Saturday night?
Yep, I worked the whole long weekend. Could use the overtime, and lots to do with the parade happening and all. I was right here on 3rd Street fixing the street light until around 4:30-ish, and then got a call on my radio that an alarm sensor went off, so I had to go.
What alarm? And where did you go?
The alarm went off at the WTF. That's just what we call the wastewater treatment facility. It's just south of town on Miller Road. I had to drive down there and check it out in case there was anything leaking, and check on the pumps.
So you're saying you went to the south end of town around 4:30 p.m. last Saturday?
Yeah, probably like 4:30 to 5-ish.
And how long is the drive to the facility, would you say?
I can usually do it in about 30 minutes.
Was anybody with you?
No, I work on my own.
Who called you on the radio to tell you about the alarm?
That would have been Shelley in dispatch. She usually works on Saturdays until 5 p.m.
So, you get a radio call about 4:30 p.m. and head straight down to the WTF. Is it fair to say you're there by about 5:15 to 5:30 p.m. with your driving?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And did anyone at the facility see you arrive?
There's nobody there on the weekend. That's why we have alarm sensors, though we get a lot of false alarms too.
Does this facility have a security system of any kind?
Yeah, it's gated. So you have to put a code in for the gate to open, and then drive in.
And are there any cameras on site there?
I think so.
So we'd be able to check the gate system to see what time you arrived, and any camera as well?
I guess so. You can call them. I don't care.
Okay, and what time were you there until?
Well, I had to change out a pump on the lower filtration system. It takes about an hour to drain, an hour to change out the pump, and an hour to refill and test.
So you were there at least 3 hours. Is that what you're saying?
Sounds about right.
Well, we'll have to check that out then. I know you're tired and getting frustrated, Danny, but there's one more thing we have to talk about before we let you go.
That's fine.
Tell us about the argument you were involved in at the prom a few weeks back.
There's not much to tell.
We'll try. What was it about?
My girl had cheated on me. Those girls told me. That's it.
By those girls, you mean the 3 young women that were murdered last Saturday night?
Yeah.
Please elaborate.
That's it.
That's it? Your girlfriend cheated on you. You found out, and that's it?
Yep, that's it. No big deal.
Danny, I got the impression from Gemma that you two were engaged, that you had discussed getting married one day, and now you've broken up and all you can say is that it's no big deal?
Well, it ain't. I mean, what am I supposed to do about it, right?
And were you romantically interested in any of the 3 young women murdered?
Nope.
I heard one of them might have been interested in you.
They were just flirts and liars, always trying to cause trouble. Everything was a game to them. I don't pay much attention to that kind of stuff.
Danny still lives here as well. He's still working for the town, now as the maintenance manager, and lives a quiet life. He has no real close friends and never got married either. Other than a few family-owned retail shops, there aren't many career-type jobs around here. There's a small bank, a smaller insurance office, and the grocery store being the largest employer in town. Having a position working for the town was considered special. Steady pay, plenty of overtime opportunities, and a future pension to look forward to made it difficult to ever consider leaving. There was no solid evidence to arrest or keep either Gemma or Danny in custody, though there was still suspicion on both because of their relationship with each other and the 3 victims. The detective just felt like either one could be holding back something, namely the truth. They looked into Danny's alibi, and Shelley in dispatch confirmed that she had radioed him about the alarm alert around 4:30 p.m. They also visited the wastewater facility and discovered there was an old security camera pointing down to the gate. Though the tape was grainy, sure enough, Danny's work truck pulled in right around 5:40 p.m. and was shown leaving just before 9 p.m. It took a few days to track down Ricky. He had returned home the following Saturday from one of his regular hunting trips. Ricky and his dad were avid hunters, and the local hunting and fishing supply store was just one of the many businesses his family owned in town. Let's review some of Ricky's interview and see what he had to say about the events.
Ricky, the reason you're here today is because your name came up during our investigation.
About the girls?
The 3 young women, yes. Where were you last weekend? On Saturday night between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m.
I was at our cabin hunting. I already told the officer that came and took me from work.
When did you leave to go to the cabin, and where is it located?
Let's see. I left Friday night right after work.
Again, where is the cabin located?
It's near Shell Lake, about 2 hours north.
Did you go there alone?
I went with my dad.
So you drove to the cabin with your father?
No, he was already there. I went to meet him there as I usually do. I have to work, so I go after work. He works when he wants, so he usually goes a day or 2 before me.
So you were at the cabin from late last Friday night until you returned to town this morning then?
Yep, sounds right.
And your father will confirm this for us?
Yep. He should be back after the weekend.
He didn't return this morning when you did?
I returned because I had to work. Like I said, he doesn't have to.
Ricky, your name came up as part of an argument that took place on the night of prom, a few weeks back. What can you tell me about that?
Not much. There was some yelling and pushing with the girls I heard, but I wasn't standing there to see it. Then I heard a couple broke up over it.
By a couple, you know who, right?
Yeah. Gemma and Danny.
And this argument was all over you having relations with Gemma?
Would it be a crime if I did? I mean, it's not like they were married or something.
And did you have relations with Gemma?
We're just friends.
Gemma made it sound like you knew of each other, but didn't hang out or anything.
Those are the kind of friends I like.
And what about Danny? Is he one of those friends, too?
Not like Gemma and me. I know who he is. He knows me, but we never really talked much. Don't imagine we will now either.
Ricky was a troubled kid, spoiled and had a bad tendency to drink well over his limit. The police sent a patrol car out to his family's cabin to confirm his alibi a few days later. But his father wasn't found at the cabin. He was, however, found the next day in the woods near the cabin. An autopsy showed he had died from a massive heart attack while hiking through the forest on a hunt alone. Tests showed his time of death to be around Sunday morning, a day before the police arrived, and a day after Ricky had returned to town. Ricky lost his father, his alibi, and for a period of time his direction in life. There was no solid evidence to arrest or hold Ricky on the triple homicide, and he soon left town for a while. Police were able to confirm he had checked into a rehab facility in the neighboring state. Today, Ricky to his friends, but Richard to his employees, still lives in town as well. He had returned after getting himself clean and turned his life around, now running the hunting and fishing store the way his father would have wanted him to do. So all three suspects from 1986 are still living in the town 10 years later. They occasionally pass each other in the streets, but rarely give more than a nod of acknowledgement. All three family homes had been searched after the interviews, and though all had guns in the homes, there was no revolver found that would match the crime scene evidence. And with no physical or forensic evidence, the case went cold. She was found at the same spot as the others, 10 years later. This time shot in the chest, with no feather left behind. But the autopsy report does mention a feather, because there's a tattoo of one on the back of the neck, the same as Gemma had. But it wasn't Gemma laying in the morgue. It was her younger sister, Andy. Andy grew up close with Gemma. In their high school years, Andy would often tag along on nights out and always admired her older sister's relationships with friends and boyfriends as well. This is a small town after all, so it wasn't unusual for the younger population at least to fool around with each other's exes after a night of drinking. She had been living in town on a nice property close to Main Street. Though married, her husband drove long-haul trucks, so he was rarely home for more than a few days a month. Neighbors would say when he was home, it didn't seem like a nice place to live. They'd hear yelling through the nights, an occasional sound of glass breaking, likely something thrown across a room. Though Andy only worked part-time, as she had done in high school, doing small landscaping jobs and decorating the town streets to match the seasons, she always seemed to be doing quite well financially. When her husband was out of town at least, she wore expensive clothing, drove a nice new SUV, and would shop local stores regularly without any concern over the price tags. She was last seen leaving the local pub, reportedly quite inebriated and lacking the balance to walk a straight line. She was overheard crying to herself by a female witness walking past her on the sidewalk. The witness tried talking to her and asked if she was okay. But Andy just said something about not caring about the money anymore, not wanting to live with this secret, and that she was going to talk to the police, before pushing the witness aside and walking off. She never made it to the police station. "10 years ago, there was a lack of forensic evidence, limited police resources, and no murder weapon found. It's understandable that this case had gone cold. Maybe the police were just waiting for that one tip, or that one person who knew more but hadn't come forward yet. And now they almost did. Andy knew what really happened that night. She was known to all 3 suspects, and this time there was a witness that saw her killer leading her into the woods. Gemma, Danny, Ricky. One of them will finally be arrested today. And after confronted with the evidence of Andy's murder, they will also confess to committing the others. So, who do you think is the killer? The suspect reveal videos will be shown on screen. Use your mouse or remote to select the suspect video that you think is the killer. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel so you know when the next video is released.